Hi, folks. Good afternoon. Welcome to ECB is moving to COD. I'm Alana Nelson. I work in the campus-based programs division of FSA in an operations capacity. I've been very intimately involved with this project for the past 9 months, along with the rest of the folks on our team and our contractor folks. This is my first time at the FSA conference. I'm a bit of a training conference neophyte, but I'm very excited to be here with you all today and share this exciting announcement. And prior to working for the department, I've been there about 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was in the financial aid office at a mid-sized private school. And prior to that, I was at a large public university. So I'm very well acquainted with the tremendous work you all do on a day-to-day basis and empathize with your perspective. But I hope that you'll welcome this transition and see it as a positive change, sort of a step forward. At the very least, I certainly don't think it will impact any of you in a negative way. So I look forward to sharing this with you. The announcement was made on August 29th, probably when most of you all were swamped welcoming students back to campus, but we did make the preliminary announcement that we would be retiring the e-campus-based system, which is where you currently log in to complete your FSA and access all campus-based information. And we'll be transferring all of that into COD. So this presentation, I'll try to just focus mostly on the how this transition will occur and when exactly. It's coming up. It's certainly sneaking up on me. It's going to happen over the course of the next 2 to 4 months, so sooner than probably we all expected. So I'm going to focus on that, and my hope is that you'll come out of here with some valuable information as far as understanding what to expect and how to prepare your school for this transition. And I forgot to mention it, I do kindly ask that folks hold any questions until the end, and I assure you we'll leave plenty of time for questions. I'm going to start by just an overview. We'll address the why, what went into this department making this decision, what we expect the impact to be on you all at the school level. And then, as I said, I'm going to focus quite a bit on the transition timeline. That's sort of the meat of this presentation and the most pertinent information for you all. And then the rest of the presentation will be devoted to just kind of giving you a preview of what certain processes will look like in COD and share screenshots with you and just give you a good sense of what it's all going to look like once we're up and running. DRAP, the Default Reduction Assistance Program, some of you might be familiar with that and utilize that at your schools. And TCLI, the Teacher Cancellation Low Income Directory, that is also affiliated with the eCampus-based website. And those are the only 2 processes that are undergoing some minor changes with this transition. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail towards the end. Other than that, nothing about campus-based programs is really changing with this transition. The FSA will still be the FSA, like it or not. And so just that's an important point that folks are looking to understand is just that not much about campus-based programs is changing. As the electronic announcement indicated, this is really just a shift in platforms, a shift in systems that you'll be using to access campus-based information and complete your FSA. So for those of you who are familiar with the ECB system, probably would agree it was a pretty antiquated system, not super intuitive or modern. So the ECB contract expiring was sort of an opportunity to explore if we had any other options. And the alternative of joining campus-based programs with COD was presented, and it was presented as the most cost-effective option for the department. But even more so than that, for FSA, from our perspective, it felt like the logical next step to combine campus-based programs with Pell and direct loans so that we're taking a step towards all campus-based processing, or excuse me, Title IV processing, being under one roof and in the same system. And we felt like this could potentially pave the way for future enhancements. Maybe one day make the phys app a little bit easier. I know yesterday somebody at the end of the session mentioned, does this mean that in part 2 I won't have to manually calculate and input my Pell Grant information from the prior year? And unfortunately, no. We haven't gotten that far yet. We had to do this transition in a really short amount of time, so we had to just focus on getting campus-based processes up and running and working correctly as they currently do. But it is our hope, no promises, but it is our hope that this will pave the way for future enhancements and making things a bit easier eventually. So the impact on you all is sort of what I've started to touch on already. It's one less system that you all have to access. We're not asking you to learn a brand new system. Most of you are probably acquainted with the look and the feel of COD. It's more modern, than ECB. And even though it'll be a bit of an adjustment to begin accessing COD for the purposes of completing your phys app and accessing campus-based info, we expect it to be pretty intuitive. And if some of you have only been using ECB a short time, you might even find this transition to be easier to learn how to access your campus-based information in the COD system. So the timeline, and be patient with me as I go through these next couple of slides. I'll spend the most amount of time on these slides. The timeline is complicated by the fact that we're making this transition in the spring. You all, just this past fall, submitted your fiscal operations report for 16-17 and your application to participate for 18-19. And we're still sort of wrapping up some processes that relate to this current phys app cycle. So essentially we're in the middle of a phys app cycle, and we're making this transition. So on the next slide, I'm going to go over each one of those processes and sort of how they'll be impacted by this transition. The really important point to note that's not on the slide, because I wasn't aware of this when I created this presentation, but you all will lose, the ECB system will shut down for a period of time before campus-based programs is up and running in COD. And the tentative projected date for that system shutdown will be on or around February 6th. That is tentative. It's subject to potentially change, but that's the planned date at this time. And then the tentative date for campus-based to be up and running in COD will be late March, perhaps early April. If there's any delays, we're hoping testing all goes well, and there shouldn't be any delays in that respect. But so it'll be about 6 weeks or so that you all won't have access to campus-based program information, or you'd be able to get in there and complete any processes or anything like that. On the admin side, folks in FSA, we will continue to retain access to the ECB system for a period of time, longer than you all will. So if something comes up, if something came up that you weren't prepared for, you weren't expected, and suddenly you do have a need to access a document that can be found in ECB, please do call our call center, and we'll work with you on that and be able to help you out of any emergencies or crises like that, hopefully. And the last bullet point here, just to reiterate and explain, nothing is really changing. Currently in the ECB system, as you know, you have access to your current phys app and all related campus-based documentation, and then you have access to the last 6 years of data. And when all that transfers over into COD, all of that will transfer over into COD. You'll have access to all that information again once we're live in COD. So nothing will be lost with this transition or become inaccessible. So when you return to your campuses, you'll have about another 2 weeks to get into your FSAPs for the reporting for 16-17 and application for 18-19. And you have until December 15th. This is the same deadline every year. It's the FSAP revision deadline. So after December 15th, the FSAP closes to any further edits. If you do log in and you attempt to make and save a correction, you can do that, but it just saves as a working copy. And you have to go to the submit button and submit a change request, and then we at FSA have to approve that change request, and then you have to log back in and resubmit so that those changes become part of your work, submitted version. So I can't stress enough, I know everybody takes this deadline seriously anyways, but there's always a number of folks who do miss the deadline for a variety of reasons. But please do everything you can to sort of prioritize over the next couple of weeks, double and triple checking your FAFSA data so that you can try to make this deadline, because due to this transition, if you have to make a correction sometime between December 15th and the system shutting down in early February, I can't make any promises or reassurances to you that we'll be able to process your change request. And if you do have to submit a change request and you get a denial notice from us, or if you don't receive any response on your change request, please know you're going to have to resubmit that when campus-based NCOD is up and running. So then come early January, we will produce a tentative awards for 18-19. We'll email your school when that's available, and we'll tell you to log in to ECB and look at your tentative award worksheets. I'm going to stress that you definitely do that as promptly as possible. The plan is to run tentative awards in early January, probably the first week or two. So when you log in and you look at your tentative award worksheets, if there's anything wrong with the awards, if there's a discrepancy, if it's significantly less or significantly more than what you're expecting, usually something like that is a result of a FSAP error, potentially. So I'm going to stress just that you make sure you look at your tentative awards closely and you contact our call center and try to identify if there was a FSAP error, because we'll want to work with you on that in the sort of short few-week time frame that we have before the system shuts down. Come early February, we will close out the 16-17 award year based on your final reported FSAP data. So if you reported any unexpended funds for the SCOG or FWS programs, the closeout process involves going into G5 and deobligating, as we say, or essentially taking back the money that you reported that wasn't spent and taking that out of G5, whether or not that money is there. So, for example, if you reported $5,000 unexpended for the 16-17 year for FSCOG, but you drew down all your money in G5, we'll go in at closeout and deobligate $5,000, and then you'll owe that $5,000 back to the department. So that sort of goes back to the double and triple check your your FSAP. Make sure that you don't have any reconciliation issues there between G5 and what you reported in preparation for the closeout process. You have until February 5th to submit a waiver request for the underuse penalty. The underuse penalty is applied if your school, for the 16-17 year for either program, SEOG or work study, if you did not spend more than 10% of your total authorization for that program, then in the 18-19 year, when we award your 18-19 SEOG or FWS award, your award will be penalized by the amount that you didn't spend in the 16-17 year. So if that happened to your school this year for an unusual reason, it was due to circumstances beyond your control, and you want to apply for a waiver of that underuse penalty, then you have until February 5th to do that, and you'll do that in the ECB system. And that deadline date is kind of the driver for the February 6th the system potentially shutting down, because we want to make sure everybody has a chance to meet that deadline if they do need to apply for an underuse waiver. Work colleges, we have a handful of work college schools, and we actually met with them at this conference, and we're working with those schools to get their applications in, because their application deadline for work college funding actually falls in the middle of this timeline of the system being shut down. So thankfully there's only 9 or 10 schools that fall into that category, and we're working closely with them. And then come April, our plan, our hope, is to be able to run final 18-19 awards in the current ECB system. And then we'll be transferring all that information over to COD, so that when Campus Space is up and running in COD, you'll be able to just access your final award worksheets in COD. This, however, is contingent upon receiving the appropriation from Congress. So that's sort of totally out of our control. Some of you know, this year we were delayed due to that. I don't think we were able to get final awards out to you all for 17-18 until late June or something like that. So we're hoping that doesn't happen, but that's our plan. And then community service waiver requests. This is another waiver application that's open and available for you to submit right now in ECB. This is a request for waiving the one or both of the 2 federal work-study community service requirements, which are that you expend at least 7% of your work-study authorization on community service activities, and you employ at least 1 federal work-study student in a reading tutor capacity. So if for any reason your school expects that you might not be able to meet either of those requirements in the 18-19 year, I'm going to strongly emphasize that you return to your campuses and get that waiver submitted before the ECB system shuts down. The deadline is not until late April. So theoretically, if everything goes according to plan, if you don't get it in ECB, then when Campus Based is live in COD in end of March, you'll have maybe a month or a few weeks or so to get that in. But just to avoid any complications, I strongly suggest you try to submit that as soon as possible in ECB. So once we are up and running in COD, that's where you will access if your school applied for an underuse waiver, for example, or if you applied for a community service waiver, that's where you'll access the official notification. We'll hold off on notifying you all of those decisions until you can actually access the official notifications in COD. Same with final awards. That's where you'll log into COD to be able to see your final 18-19 awards. If your school is one that participates in Title III or Title V programs, the Office of Post-Secondary Education makes those determinations. And if you do qualify for any of those programs, then you automatically qualify for a waiver of the institutional matching requirement for campus-based programs. So that process will occur once we're up and running in COD. We get a list of those schools from the Office of Post-Secondary Education, and we then send an email and notify those schools and post an official waiver eligibility letter. So that will all happen in COD. We also made an announcement about the Perkins Excess Liquid Capital process, the ELC process. That normally would have happened by now, but we have specifically, purposefully delayed that until we're in COD. So in early April sometime, more than likely, if your school is determined to have ELC, you'll be notified by us at that time. And finally, you will submit your next FSA in the COD system, the application for 19-20, and the reporting for 17-18. And all other processes from that point on will be occurring in the COD system. A little bit about access. Essentially, the way this is going to work is anyone at your school that has access to COD, once we're up in once campus-based is live in COD, campus-based information will be available to users that already have access to COD. We got a lot of questions on this front during the presentation yesterday, because I completely understand there's a lot of folks in your offices who probably utilize COD who you don't necessarily want them to have access to FSA information in the campus-based portion. And then there might be folks potentially who don't have access to COD yet, and you'll need to enroll them so that they can have access to campus-based program information once we're up and running in COD. And it's going to be your DPA at your school who sort of has to handle those permissions and adjust people's user roles depending on what you want them to have access to. We understand this is a difficult topic, so we're definitely going to put out probably an electronic announcement in the next month or so that addresses that more specifically. So stay tuned for a bit more information on that. This is just a screenshot of what it'll look like when a user logs into COD. You'll now see the campus-based system option. Back to the change request process, I'll touch on this briefly just because it may end up being one of the first things your school has to do once campus-based is in COD. The process is really going to work essentially exactly the same way that it did in the ECB system. You're supposed to make and save your corrections to the applicable section of the FSA. And then when you go to submit, it will prompt you to submit a change request. There were some slight inefficiencies about the way this worked in the ECB system. For example, you could go straight to the submit button without actually making or saving any corrections, and you could submit a change request. So we're sort of tightening some of that up in the COD system, so it will make you make and save and validate your corrections before it even allows you to actually submit a change request. And then once you do submit that change request, you have to wait on a response from us at the department before you can continue to make any further modifications to that particular FSA. So it'll essentially become locked again once you submit your change request. So, but you will be able to see the status of all your change requests, current pending requests. You'll show them as pending. You'll be able to see any prior change requests, whether they were approved or denied. You'll continue to, of course, receive an email once a change request is approved or denied. This is just a screenshot of what it looks like when you need to provide your explanation, provide an email address, and that's a screenshot of just showing you all your change requests. So as I briefly mentioned already, ELC, this was purposefully postponed until we were live in COD. It's important to note, please do not send any money to the department until you actually hear from us in an official capacity that you owe excess liquid capital back to the department. So make sure you hold off and just wait to hear from us. And the process will work exactly as it did in prior years. You'll be notified from the department via email. You'll be able to log into COD and view your ELC worksheets and the official notification letter, and as well submit an adjustment request if your school needs to do that. There's an example just of the adjustment request screenshot. Perkins liquidation, this is another just sort of ongoing process. Your school may have already started. You might be planning to start soon. So if you've already started, then you've electronically submitted the intent to liquidate and close out your Perkins portfolio in the ECB system. And depending on which phases you've completed, all that information will transfer over into COD, and you'll just continue the process as you had been. If you're going to liquidate, once we're up in COD, then you'll just electronically submit that intent and closeout form, and our Perkins liquidation team will work with you on all the steps that take place after that. So that's just a sample screenshot of the intent and closeout form. And it will show you your status for each particular phase of the process. And finally, the first thing some of you might be doing is just your next year's FSAP, your application for 1920, and the fiscal operations report for 1718, which will be due on October 1st, 2018. And as I said earlier, all other campus-based processes from that point on will be starting a fresh FSAP cycle, all entirely in the COD system. And e-signature is going away with this transition. I'm guessing the majority of you are welcoming of that news. For those of you that have found a way to get your presidents and CEOs on board with that and you've made that work, we do apologize that we're taking away that option. It was a slim minority of you. With this transition, it was sort of a matter of looking at the level of effort that was involved in bringing that process up in COD versus how many schools actually utilized it, which I think we get something like 300 or 400 e-signatures every year versus the 3,500 to 4,000 FSAPs that actually get submitted. So it wasn't worth the level of effort to bring it up. It feels a little bit like a step backwards, but for most of y'all, I think it was easier to just get your presidents and CEOs just sign and mail a hard copy signature. So no big change there. I can't promise that we won't try to bring it back one day. We'll see, so stay tuned on e-signature. This is just a screenshot of what we'll call your FSAP dashboard. When you log into COD and you click on campus space, there'll be a menu option on the left where you'll click on the FSAP, and you'll see this FSAP dashboard. This is much like the self-service page currently that's in ECB, where you can see your current FSAP and then all your prior year FSAPs. This is just a random sort of sample of what a particular screen might look like when you're completing your FSAP. As you all probably remember, each part, there's part 1 through part 6 of the FSAP, and then each respective part has a section A, section B, section C, etc. And in the ECB system, all that was sort of very jumbled and clustered on a left-hand menu. So now at the top of the screen, you'll see the section A, B, C, D. So it's a little bit I think visually more pleasing. All of your forms and waivers, if they apply to your school, they'll be located on a separate page called Forms and Waivers. So you can, if you did submit an underuse waiver or community service waiver, if your school happens to be a work college, for example, or if you happen to participate in lobbying activities that you have to fill out the lobbying form, then all those various forms will show up here under the Forms and Waivers page. You can see which ones are complete, which ones are in progress, which ones are pending a signature, if that's applicable. And that's just an example of the lobbying form and what that will look like. And campus-based awards, I've really already touched on this information, but as I said, we'll be closing out the 16-17 award year and making 18-19 campus-based awards in the ECB system, hopefully. And then all awarding, tentative and finals for the 19-20 year will occur in COD. And this is just a screenshot of where you'd go to access your statement of accounts and your tentative and final funding worksheets. So a bit about DREP, the Default Reduction Assistance Program for Perkins. Not a lot of schools utilize this, but it's essentially a service that the department has offered for quite some time where a school can log into ECB, access the DRAP menu option, and provide us with names of borrowers or upload a list of borrower names. And the department will send those students a letter on official departmental letterhead, just as an incentive to get students to be responsive to their defaulted Perkins loans. And the department would actually print and mail the hard copy letters. And what's changing is that we're turning this into an email service, essentially. So you'll still be able to utilize drop services if your school uses the service, but it will just be an official letter from the department on departmental letterhead, but sent to the students via email. And you'll have the option to still print a PDF copy of the letter and mail it yourselves. But we have chosen to transition this into a email-only service. So this is just a screenshot of the drop services. Your school has to have a contact person entered because when we send the letter, we instruct the students to contact the school to resolve their Perkins loan. The teacher cancellation low income directory, this was, most of you probably wouldn't have any idea that this was affiliated with ECB or campus-based programs, but the tcli.ed.gov website was part of ECB, managed under the same contract. And this is where borrowers go and loan servicers go to determine if a school that they're working at is listed on the TCLI directory, which would in turn potentially make them eligible for certain loan forgiveness and loan cancellation programs, and as well the Teach Grant program. So the way this is managed currently is the state departments of education are responsible for maintaining these lists. We authorize access to those members of each state department to be able to upload their lists for each year to the tcli.ed.gov website. And instead, what we're doing is essentially doing away with the tcli.ed.gov website, and we're making the TCLI directory available in studentloans.gov, which I think makes sense. Studentloans.gov is where students, borrowers would go to get information about teacher loan forgiveness, about the eligibility requirements, about the actual application. So we think it makes sense to now also have the TCLI directory available in that same website. So that's the other change. I just want to stress to you all to please stay tuned. I know that we're going to put out another electronic announcement pretty soon with the details of the system shutdown. And more details about this transition. So please stay tuned for further communications from us. If you're on the IFAP website, there is a link for campus-based programs, and that takes you directly to information that's specific about campus-based programs and EAs. So please stay tuned. And as I said, we'll also be posting information about the user access as that relates to this transition. So. That's all I have for you today. If there are questions, I would appreciate if folks could come up to the microphones. Hi.
Hi, I just had a question about the security when the users are rolled into the new COD ECB. So you'd said that they would everyone would automatically have access. Do you mean that every current existing COD user will have access, or the ones that were rolled from ECB to COD will have access?
I'm going to bring up my colleague here, Morgan Sadler, and they turned on these microphones for us. So. Oh, I thought this was going to. Okay, you take my spot.
We can try again in a minute. Yeah, so the answer to that question, any user that currently has access in the COD system will maintain that access in COD, and they will also now be able to click on the campus-based link on the left nav.
So the expectation is that we as primary destination point administrators will go in and revise their roles? Are there going to be new roles available that limit ECB access to a COD users, and we'll be doing all of that for all of our users on the SAIG portal.
So with this, we're not creating new user roles, but yes,
There will be or will not?
there will not be new user roles, and this will be on the school's DPA to decide access as appropriate.
What? I don't understand what you just said. If there are no new security roles and
Sorry.
ECB access is included automatically, how can we as a change anything? There has to be new roles that limit, otherwise everyone has the same access. I mean, there has to be new roles that say you have this level of ECB access and this other role does not have that level of ECB access. Otherwise, everything's the same. That's why I asked.
No, you're absolutely correct, right? So the school users that have access to the COD website now, when they log in after we move campus-based over to COD, they will have access to the campus-based pages on COD. Now, if you have users that are limited just to campus-based and do not have access to COD, they will need to be enrolled into the COD website.
So the idea is everyone has access to ECB no matter
not gonna
what.
work.
And
That's
I can
correct.
just limit the users on COD access only, and that's
You
it.
will not have the ability to limit your users to just see the campus-based
That's a
pages on
problem.
COD.
That's a major
That's
problem.
not gonna work.
You need to fix that.
Yeah, that's not gonna work. Oh,
This is a big deal. I think you should not proceed with this project unless you can fix this. No, I understand, but you're putting our school at risk if you do that.
yep.
No, we understand that that's an issue of current COD users at your school.
I would say that's a
not-
showstopper issue.
Sorry?
A showstopper issue.
Understood, yeah, and we, this has been a work in progress with a lot of moving parts, and I assure you that we're gonna take that back and talk about it more. Hi.
Hi, you mentioned that Title III 5 waivers notification would be in COD.
Yes.
Is it just a notification and not the application for that?
Right. The application process happens with OPE, the Office of Post-Secondary Education. They typically in early December, they make that announcement, they post a Federal Register notice, and they open up the application. That's been delayed this year due to their own processes. And it's my understanding that come early January, they'll be posting their annual Federal Register notice about that and opening up the application. So if your school doesn't automatically qualify based on IPEDS data that they review annually, if your school doesn't automatically qualify for a Title III or Title V program, then you'll have to apply. And they usually looks like they're opening up the application in early January, and they usually give about a month.
Okay, and there's no plans to move that to COD?
Oh,
right?
no,
Okay.
no, that's a totally separate process. It's not managed by us. It's just that, yeah.
Just
that
that we'll
that
get the
we-
notification in
Exactly.
COD. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So
Hi.
you mentioned that CB access will end February 6th, or potentially,
Right.
but that kind of conflicts with what was announced yesterday, that the end-of-year money that normally goes back to the Treasury will be reallocated for FWS sometime in February of 2018. They said that yesterday at the federal update, so how will schools access that supplemental allocation?
Sure. Well, as I said, we'll continue to have administrative access. So we'll be able to run that process, and we will probably find a way to notify you all of that outside of the ECB system.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll have to take that back as well.
Okay.
But-
Hi. Is there a reason why if we have trained or gotten our presidents to e-sign, why they can't continue to e-sign instead of now telling them, oh, we're going back to paper, but maybe we'll have to bring you on board again in
Yeah.
another year or two. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
I understand. And you're, I think, among the minority of folks that, that are inconvenienced by that, and I definitely do apologize. As I said, though, it was a matter of looking at the level of effort that it was going to take us to bring that process up. There's a lot of other components to making e-signature work. And so there was a tremendous level of effort involved in bringing that up in COD as an option, and not a lot of schools that use it currently. So like I said, I don't know that we'll do away with it entirely forever, but at this time, we couldn't implement that in the short time frame we had to make this
So
transition.
does that mean that the financial aid administrators will also have to submit via paper? Or can
Oh,
we,
no,
when we
no.
submit,
No, no.
it's electronic?
You submit the FISUP electronically. They just, your
No, I
president.
mean, there's also a signature page that could include
Right.
the administrator's signature. But when we submit it, it's e-signed by us, right?
No.
So we're going to have to e-sign it, or we're going to have to sign it as well? Or we just
You're-
fill in our information, but we
Right,
submit
right.
it?
Right. And when the financial aid administrator submits it, then you print out the signature page and your president or CEO signs off
Right,
on
we've
that.
been doing everything electronically, so,
Right. So the only thing that's changing is that your
President
president
can't
will
sign
no
it
longer
electronically.
need to have signature access. That will be taken away. You'll just have to hand your president or CEO the hard copy signature page, as you would have done
and
3 years
the
ago before
other
we implemented
forms and
e-signature.
everything else. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, if you're interested in an enhancement for the future, as long as we're going to continue to collect wet signatures on paper docs, it'd be wonderful if we could upload a scanned copy instead of mailing it in. That'd be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, we will take that back as well. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, my email is my name, Alana, ALANNA, .Nelson, NELSON, @ed.gov. You can feel free to contact me if you guys come up with any other questions or recommendations for the future, or call our call center. Thank you so much for being here.